Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. I'm Annie.
And I'm Peter.
Join us this week while we rant, rave, and ramble about games that we like.
Or maybe we don't like.
So, again, it's time to ask, what is this game?
We are talking about Terraria.
For anyone that doesn't know what Terraria is, the easiest way to describe it is 2D Minecraft, which is a severe injustice to the game because comparing the two will make you're doing a disservice to both of the games. This week we have a guest with us.
Definitely.
Sorry, go ahead, Peter.
I was just saying it's apples to oranges, definitely.
It's like apples to potatoes. It's like comparing fruits and vegetables. This week we have a guest with us. Alyster, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. I am Alyster. I'm a video game player. I have played select few video games of many franchises, and I look forward to being on the podcast.
Well, thanks. We enjoy having you. Alyster and I started playing Terraria about 2, maybe 3 weeks ago. I just kind of suggested it on a whim. I just kind of wanted something to play together, so we could spend more time together. And it's something we kind of both had experience with beforehand. I had played, at least according to my Steam, like 400 something hours on just my main profile. And Alyster has something like, how many hours?
I think before we started our playthrough, I had like maybe roughly 400 hours myself, or just a little under it.
Now, however, you had never played it with like anyone else. You basically had just kind of played solo for the most part. Is that correct?
Yeah, I played solo until like I got stuck at a certain part in the game. And then because of that, I just would stop playing or just do other tasks in the game.
And what about you, Peter? What is your experience with the game?
I have played, over the years, maybe a collection of 3 hours of Terraria. So I have nothing. I am going to embody the audience this episode and ask questions that they may be asking, and just I don't know anything.
All right, so we have a pretty good perspectives. Most of my hours playing Terraria, I've never really played it solo because, in my opinion, the game is incredibly frustrating at points. So I never really played it myself, but I had played it with many times with other players. I have done at least now, including the one we just finished, probably 15 beginning to Moonlord, and Moonlord is the final boss in the game. So I've beaten the game at least 15 times over the years. How many times have you beaten the game, Alyster?
Well, in terms of official beating the game from start to finish, only once, and that was for our playthrough.
And I get kind of proud of that, because when we started playing together, you mentioned a couple of times that you had, like you said, played up until a certain point, and you kind of hit like a wall, and where you weren't really able to progress any further. And what we kind of mean by that is in Terraria, there is a very, very strict and linear progression system in the game. It's not like Minecraft where you just mine one thing and then your goal is to get diamonds and then kill a dragon and you beat the game. That's pretty watered down explanation of what Minecraft's goal is, but that is basically Minecraft. In Terraria, there is at least 8 or 9 bosses, like main bosses you have to beat to get to the end of the game. And the bosses are no joke. They can be as simple as a really powerful slime or a magical fairy that turns the game into a bullet hell where you have to be able to fly and be omnidirectional or you're going to get killed. So the game has a very steep incline in difficulty and challenge.
Very much true.
Interesting. So, like, would you describe it as kind of like a boss rush kind of video game? Go to from one boss to another?
You definitely can. It after you beat your first playthrough, you can just start another world and bring characters because your characters are saved in a separate file, and you can just jump into any world with that character. And anything the character has in their inventory, you can bring into that world. So if you wanted to, you could start a brand new world and have a bunch of boss spawners in your hands, and just wait until the right time of day or go to the right places in the world, and just like you said, do a boss rush. After we beat our first playthrough, like all the way up till Moonlord, and we killed Moonlord, we started what is called Expert Mode, which is a follow-up difficulty to the game, which you can start just right off the bat. You don't have to start. You don't have to do like regular mode and then Expert Mode. If you wanted to, you could just start the game in Expert Mode and let the game punish you brutally. However, we just kind of started, Alyster and I just kind of started, and we did the game kind of like a new game plus. We brought in all the gear we needed, all the spawners we needed, with as much inventory space as we could carry. And we're like, okay, so we're just going to stay here. We're going to kill as many bosses as we can and get all the new loot. Because in the new expert mode, which is, like I said, the follow-up difficulty, there's new special items. For example, Queen Slime, she drops a orb that makes you constantly shoot slime at enemies. So it's like a defense item. It's a defense offense item. So it's just a cool, unique item that you could get from killing her in expert mode. But that's really fast forwarding way into the future. If you're starting off brand new into the game, you start off in the world just walking around, and all you have is just a couple copper tools. You have a copper short sword, a copper axe, a copper pickaxe, and maybe a couple torches. That's about all you have. You do also spawn with an NPC who can be randomly named called the Guide. And the Guide is very useful. He can teach you basic mechanics about what items do. If you talk to him, you can show him any item in the game, and he will tell you if or what and how it builds into something else. So if you bring him a stick, he'll be like, okay, well, this is what you can make sticks into. He is essentially the crafting guide. He will teach you any recipe you need to know about anything, which is very helpful in the beginning of the game if you don't know how to do something. Like, I don't know how to build a forge so I can start melting iron. Well, you're going to have to ask the guide. Well, I assume it's probably made out of rock, so you bring him a rock, and he'll tell you, hey, you can build a furnace out of this, plus this, if you go to this crafting station. Which is another mechanic the game functions around, is different individual crafting stations.
Yeah, and also if you talk to him, sometimes he'll give you some helpful information as to, hey, go check out this area of the map, and you can find, and sometimes you can find an NPC there. Like if you go to the ocean, you'll find your angler guy who gives you a fishing quest to do for every day in the game. Or if you go to forget where else, like underground, sometimes you'll find an NPC tied up down there.
Speaking of the NPCs, there's like 15, 20 NPCs, and they're a kind of very important mechanic of the game because they're your shops. They sell you exclusive items you can't get anywhere else or anything like that. So, Alyster, why don't you tell us a little bit about the NPCs, since I know that's kind of one of your specialty areas.
So, for a good time of playing this game, I was always interested in getting us new NPCs, building them new homes for them to reside in so we could have them to our resources. And one of the first NPC you get is the guide, and the second is typically a merchant that you can buy select few new tools from or sell some materials you don't need, but they do some items do sell for money, but not all. From there, like you'll counter The next NPC you could end up finding is one that's off in the wilds on some part of the map. That is the old man at the dungeon. He's not someone you get until later on, but he still plays a vital role. And then there's some NPCs that only spawn after you find them after completing certain flags in the game, like beating a boss or just conveniently happening upon them during your exploration of the world. And to keep them near your settlement, you build them a home.
And the game has a nice housing system. There in your like inventory menu, there is a player housing check where you can hit a question mark on any building you've built and ask the game, is this suitable housing for the purposes of moving an NPC into it if you want them to live somewhere, instead of just wandering around and being homeless. And them being homeless isn't really a problem if you have them all contained in kind of an area, whatever, but that's a little bit inhumane. And you don't really want to do that because if for whatever reason they end up being killed, they don't respawn if they don't have somewhere to move into, somewhere to live. They don't respawn. So that is a massive reason that you want the housing. So you just hit the little player check or the housing check, and what are the requirements to make a successful house?
Your requirements? Usually, you have to have a house that is like 16 blocks in total. But like, you also need room for furniture, a light source, and typically you'll have to have a door so they can enter and leave the building as they please. And sometimes wherever you build the house and the conditions that you have, the NPCs do have preferences when it comes to their housing. Like,
do you have an example?
Yeah, biomes and the other NPCs that they have likes or dislikes towards. And those are like the main two things that comes to their happiness that I can think of.
They have happiness?
Yes, in this dire world that they live in, they have a happiness system.
See, I kind of asked the same thing because I played back in the day where that wasn't a mechanic, and you could literally shove all of the NPCs in a dirt house in the floor, in just like a cage as in the smallest possible rooms, and everyone was just like in a grid of housing, and that was fine. And that's how most people played games. You just had these big, giant one-room houses, or, well, one-structure houses with all these rooms in it. And we start playing again, and I hadn't honestly played a real playthrough since 2019. I had played on and off because of the updates they released, and I checked out a couple of the new things, but I didn't even pay attention to like the patch notes because it's not a game I really typically follow. Mm-hmm. But Alyster says, we should think about moving them over there so, they're more happy. And I'm like, why does that even matter?
The fuck? They could be happy?
What do you mean? Like, they care?
Like, my whole thing is, like, I'm doing the sin of comparing it to Minecraft, and I'm thinking of, like, villager trading halls where they just need 2 blocks where they exist, and they live forever. There's no food, there's no water, there's lights for me, not for them, for me, so I can see. And they spend the rest of their lives there waiting to trade me a mending book. So when you say happiness, preferences, requirements, I'm thinking these are some bougie NPCs.
No kidding.
Yeah, they don't like being in the like jailhouse, like that's above your house where you can ring them whenever you need them.
No villager pit, I see. That's a shame.
No, apparently that method has been discontinued.
The world been patched out.
Yeah, the world is slowly developing like regulations. Ugh.
Rights.
Ugh.
I don't even want to think about my NPCs having rights.
But like one of the main benefits to happiness is that maxing out or doing the best you can to max out their happiness can gain you some benefit. It gives you a discount on their services or items that they sell, which if you're playing the game by yourself, every gold coin is worth so much more than what it could be when you're on multiplayer.
Mm-hmm.
That's
definitely true.
That's another thing I think we should talk about. Like, in this game, you have monies. Like, there is money and you buy stuff.
That's a good point. That's a core mechanic we just kind of glossed over is, yeah, you do have money in increments, just kind of like we talked about in our Guild Wars episode. 100 copper is 1 silver. 100 silver is 1 gold. And unlike Guild Wars, it does have platinum. So 100 gold is 1 platinum. Unfortunately, it doesn't go any higher than that, so you just start hoarding platinum after that point. But as Alyster mentioned, the discount on NPC services is also included. So a really important service that NPCs offer, or one of them, is the Goblin Tinkerer. The Goblin Tinkerer offers you the ability to reforge items or weapons so you can change the prefix on them. And if you know anything about prefixes on weapons and armor, they can be either really good or really shit.
Yep.
Or the worst of all, no prefix.
Now, I obviously know what a prefix is, but let's pretend there's this fourth person in the call that has no idea what a prefix is. Let's talk for them.
Wait, there's a fourth person?
Yeah, for my friend. Like, just asking for a friend. What is a prefix?
A prefix is a gaming term, essentially, that denotes a title on a piece of armor. The title will give it a sort of stats. It'll a perfect example is like quick. So if the item has a prefix of quick, it'll give you increased speed or like reload speed or whatever the game entails. The quick prefix will modify that item to give it increased stats in that field. So if you want all of your build to have critical strike chance, you need to go and re-roll all of your gear at the Goblin Tinkerer for critical strike chance prefixes. There's varying power levels in Terraria: 1, 2, 3, and 4%. 4% obviously being the highest, and that's the one you want to re-roll towards.
Okay, so it's your bread and butter, like, this is my keyword kind of thing.
Absolutely. It'll be the first word on almost any item that you equip or use, and it'll especially on like items like weapons or tools, it'll drastically increase stats. Sometimes it can have up to like 5 or 6 positive increases on one stat, such as the legendary modifier. It can give you plus size, plus speed, plus knockback, plus critical strike chance, plus damage, minus cost. So it can give you like everything positive and no negatives, which is really good. Problem with rolling your items over and over is the better the prefix is, the more expensive it is to re-roll. So that sounds like it kind of makes sense, but whenever you're re-rolling and you get, for example, you get the chain gun minigun, and you're like, okay, cool, I want to give it the best prefix it can get, which according to the Wikipedia is rapid. So rapid is like a mid-tier prefix according to the game. But you start re-rolling it and you get legendary on it. Okay, well that sounds great, but it's not the best prefix for it. Re-rolling a legendary item can cost almost a platinum sometimes.
Yeah.
Alyster sounds like they are in pain.
A platinum, yeah, like since they've played a lot by themselves, all their money really mattered before. They didn't just have a second player with a shitload of money just to like bank on, or to be in different parts of the world collecting them, or if you die to pick up your money. Because in Terraria, you don't drop items, you drop money, which is very important. You need it to buy health potions, you need it to buy rope, which is very important in the early game because fall damage is a thing and you need to be able to get back up places.
Rope is a godsend. I haven't played much, but I know rope is good.
Mm-hmm.
So the short and sweet of this whole topic is basically, if you can get the NPCs to be happy, they will give you a discount on their stores and their services, which can be very valuable when you're trying to reroll weapons, because you can burn through platinum in a couple of seconds.
So here's what I'm understanding so far. So we have these bougie NPCs that need a mansion to live in, and when I give them a mansion, they will sell me rope at a discount. And once I get the rope, I can go down into the mines and tinker away for a while, and then come back to the bourgeoisie and trade them for prefixes, for grammar.
Well, you can sell them the stuff that you got for money, and then give them the money that you got from them. There's like a middleman in there. You need the money to do the re-rolling.
To buy the grammar.
Yes, to buy grammar.
Okay, it's cool. I'm just clarifying here for everybody because we've heard a lot of terms, and I'm just like, let me make sure I got it in my noggin.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. That is a very simplified breakdown of it. There are many different NPCs with varying services, and one of the newest ones, which I believe was added in the 2020 update, NPCs now can sell you a item called a pylon.
Okay, sounds important.
Alyster, what is a pylon?
So, a pylon is something that you are able to purchase from an NPC. NPCs that do sell stuff, they will offer a pylon if you have them in housing within a proximity of each other. So, you can set up two housing units over in, like, the snow biome, and if those NPCs like each other, they should be able to sell you a pylon at which you can set up at their home, and then if you have another one at your base area in the forest with your guide and your merchant, you can teleport between the two. And like, more NPCs you get, more housing you can make across the world, and you'll have a teleport network before you can even get certain tools in the game that allow you to warp to different points in the world.
So in short, it's little teleporter pads that NPCs sell once they're friendly enough. So you can move them away from your housing settlement, which was kind of like the meta before, back in the day, have them all in one house. You can have them spread out anywhere in the world, and you don't have to worry about, I have to walk all the way to the snow biome. That's 3/4 of the world away, and I don't have any boots yet, so I can't run fast. Well,
yeah, I gotta hike to the projects to go see my guys. No, not anymore.
And God forbid it's a blood moon. Now either you're gonna have to battle your way there or sleep and wait till it's over. So you can set up the pylons, and as long as you're in range of one pylon, you can teleport to any of the other ones with the click of a button. So it is fast travel exclusively to NPC housing, which is extremely useful, especially if you have set up NPC housing in different parts of the world to maximize A, how good it looks, B, the theming of it, and C, which is the most important, how happy they are. Because certain NPCs like being in certain places. There's an NPC, he's a pirate captain. He obviously likes being on the beach, because that kind of goes with his theming. It might actually make sense for him to be liking the beach. If you're not a pirate anymore, wouldn't you want to be as far away from the water as you could be?
You would think so, right? There's some trauma there. It's like, I've lost so many of me mates in the ocean. I want to live in the forests.
But he does like the ocean, and the NPC that he likes the most is the angler. The angler is kind of neutral towards a lot of NPCs, except a few. But like, the pirate really likes the angler. He likes the ocean, so getting him maxed out on his happiness is quite easy.
I thought you were about to say the angler is neutral towards the pirate captain.
Oh, he kind of portrays that too. He's like, whatever, this guy's here.
Okay,
And
perfect. My headcanon is good.
Yeah, and the pirate's like, yes, this I will train. I will raise him to be like me. Yeah, it's definitely a one-way relationship there.
So definitely my headcanon is the pirate captain is like, oh, I'm going to train him to be the next pirate king, and the angler's just like, I give that guy a fish every once in a while. He talks to me. I let him go for a while.
He carries a blunderbuss, so he protects me from zombies.
Yeah, he shoots the zombies while I fish, so I guess he's okay. But if he magically disappeared one day, I wouldn't be hurt.
Yeah, there's some NPCs that are like, it makes sense how they fit into their imaginary Venn diagram of liking and disliking people. Mm-hmm. A good example is there's an NPC that you can unlock through various means. He's the tax collector. Nobody likes the tax collector, right? Boo!
Boo! Taxman!
So he's kind of creepy and decrepit, especially if
creepy Taxman? Hold on, I don't like this at all.
Exactly. He's got the Ebenezer Scrooge to him.
Ugh, he's got a monocle. Ugh.
Yeah, he's old, decrepit, grumpy. He probably smells. But there's another NPC called the Party Girl, and everybody loves the Party Girl. She's really fun. She throws parties. She's like the pony Pinkie Pie from My Little Pony, but as a person.
She's your manic pixie dream girl. Everybody loves the manic pixie dream girl,
especially the tax collector. The tax collector loves the Party Girl. A problem is, if you try to put them in housing together, it's not gonna work because the Party Girl hates him. Hates
because
him.
He probably sniffs her socks or something.
Exactly. He's creeping up on her.
That was my deduction from looking at that, diagram of the NPCs. I'm like, okay, I kind of see what's going on. Got to keep them as far away from each other as possible.
Yeah, so what's going on is he is subscribed to her OnlyFans, and she is just not having it.
Yeah, he's on his 50 alt on his on her OnlyFans.
She keeps blocking him, and he has so much money that he's just like, I'm gonna keep coming back. I'm gonna see those feet pics, girl.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's funny how much we've talked about the NPCs, and they're just kind of the precursor to a lot of the mechanics in the game, because that's the game is not about just farming and playing with NPCs and making them happy.
This is not 2D Stardew Valley.
No, exactly.
True.
It's not. That's just a core mechanic that kind of sets the groundwork for a lot of other things. It sets up where you're going to live. It sets up who's going to live with you, because you always want your guide with you unless you have a Wikipedia in your brain or on another screen, because you always need to know what you can craft into other things, or God forbid you forget and you closed your tab already. So it's just nice to be able to have your guide living with you. You also want your guide, you want to live near the nurse, because if you die, you want to be able to heal full health by paying a little bit of money. So they're not the whole game, but they do make a giant impact on your gaming experience.
They're not the whole game, but they're the memorable part of the game, I guess.
No, the actual gameplay is mostly exploring caves, killing enemies that try to kill you. There's a whole bunch of enemies. The mob variety in this game is kind of insane.
It's ridiculous. It is ridiculous.
You've got flying enemies, enemies that can go through ground. You've got magic enemies, enemies that shoot bullets. You've got slime spiders. You've got giant deer creatures. I'm
gonna get really close to the mic for this one. You have these eyeball things with tentacles, and they fly all over the place, and they headbutt you. Well, I butt you, and it's pretty bad. 1 out of 10 would not recommend. I do not like them.
Yeah, I don't know who came up with that. It's like the NSoft logo is just trying to kill you at all times.
They're so freaking ugly too. It's like I'm playing this mystical game about adventuring, and there's this freaking giant eyeball that flies. Why does it fly? I don't know. It's got tentacles. Maybe it's part of some weird hentai thing. I don't know, but it's here and it wants me.
Oh no, there's 5 more.
Oh, and that's the thing too. They're never alone. There are always like 5 of them.
Yeah, the game is
Especially on a
intense with the
blood
amount
moon.
of mob density too. And it only gets harder and harder as you go through the game. So you're going through the game, just exploring, going through caves, and at the beginning, unless you've played before, you don't really have a game plan. Other than, I'm going to build some houses, I'm going to go explore, maybe I'll walk all the way to the end of the world and to the other end of the world. Just simple goals.
Mining and crafting.
Mining and crafting.
And mining.
But then you start to find more and better equipment, and eventually, as the nights go by through the game, you will eventually have to fight a boss. Whether you want to or not, the game is going to spawn a boss on you.
Ooh.
Oh yeah.
I believe, according to the math, after the first 2 nights, there is a 1 in 3 chance for the boss to spawn until he spawns. So
wait. No.
Simplifying.
We're stopping right there. There, after day 2, day 3, there is a 33% chance that I'm gonna fight a boss.
Yep.
Day 3.
Yeah, he coming to knock on your door. Well, fly through it.
How long is a day?
24 minutes for a full cycle.
Oh, okay, never mind.
Yeah, I think it's 12 minutes and 12 minutes.
Okay, so first hour of the game, I'm fighting a boss.
Probably, yeah. And if you're not ready, he's definitely going to wreck your shit. A core mechanic in Terraria is being able to be the master of your environment and the mobility of the environment that you're in. A great mechanic or a great strategy to fight the mechanics of the bosses for a lot of early game players is to make a simple arena, which is really, really easy. All you do is just take wood that you cut down from the trees or dirt, whatever material you want, honestly. Wood just works because you can make platforms out of it. So you just make one tall pillar of dirt, just 1 block tall. I don't know, as tall as you want it. We'll just go 50 blocks. And then you just make a wood platform going all the way across, and then another pillar going down to the ground. So it's just a big H with a pillar, or with a platform in it. And then you just keep putting platforms in between the spokes of the H. So you just have a bunch of platforms going up and down in 2 big pillars. What that allows you to do is just jump and have a lot of verticality. And a lot of the bosses in Terraria can easily be conquered with movement speed and verticality. If the boss has to move up to you, they can't hit you with a move that goes straight. They have to move up to the same level as you before they can hit you with a straight move. So it makes the boss constantly have to reposition itself to hit you before it can hit you. And since you're already always moving, bosses that shoot any sort of projectiles are always whiffing you because a lot of bosses aren't programmed to shoot where you're going to be. They shoot where you are. So if you
they don't lead the shots.
Exactly, they don't lead the shots. So a lot of the bosses in the beginning, as long as you build a rudimentary arena, and it doesn't even have to be like what I said. It could just be floating platforms. It could just be one giant sky bridge. Basically anything that removes your ability or removes the requirement of you having to go up or down in a fight that you don't want to. Like climbing up a hill or falling down into a pit, you're going to die. You're going to get killed. So you're going to have to 100% be prepared for the terrain that you're going to fight in. And the easiest way is to create it.
Yes, terraforming is kind of becomes your best tool aside from the weapons you acquire or craft. That's for certain.
Because you can build an arena anywhere.
It's interesting that we go back to what you were saying before of being the master of your environment. That definitely sounds like you are mastering your environment right there.
Yep, and you have to, because after the first boss, which the first boss that I mentioned that spawns forced by the game is the Eye of Cthulhu. It's just a big giant version of the eyes Peter was talking about, really big. And then
The eyes I see in
once
my
you do enough
nightmares.
damage to him, he gets even angrier and faster. Pretty simple boss, not a lot going on to him. You just have to be faster than him and either hit him before he can hit you, or build some sort of range weapons. You can build a bow, or if you have the merchant, you can buy shurikens. There's a lot of ways that you can hit the boss from a range early on in the game. So that is a really good strategy for a lot of beginning players or people that have played the game and are in on a new character. You definitely want to hit them with range and build an arena where you can outmove them. After you've beaten the first boss, you're like, oh, okay, well, now I know, oh crap, I have to fight these big bosses and I gotta be prepared for that. So you start getting prepared and you build up your bases, you build up your armor, and you start collecting better and better materials. Because the game has a tier of hardness. Starts like you get copper, and copper is pretty soft, so you can mine it with copper. And there's harder and harder metals that you need better and better tools to start breaking. As you explore the world, you're eventually going to come across one of two biomes. Either you're going to come across a corruption or a crimson. Alyster, do you want to explain what either of those are?
You sound like you don't like that. I want to hear what you have to say about it.
So the Crimson and the Crimson and Corruption, they're the evil that's spreading through the land, or will spread through the land at a certain point. But in these two biomes, you have to dwell underground through the chasms they create that lead you down to their depths. And in them, there are these, either if it's corruption, it's just these solid purple orbs that you have to dig your way to with some better tool than copper or its alternative. And or if it's the crimson, it'll be just hearts that are just beating in their little enclosed space. But either way, these respective biomes have their own unique boss dedicated to just them. And for the corruption, it's a giant worm that's called the Eater of Worlds. And it's a boss
massive.
it's
one of
huge.
Those enemies that can actually go through walls, which I mentioned before. There are enemies that can sort of fly and go through walls because he's a big worm. The game is 2D. To preface that, if I didn't say at the very beginning, it's 2D. So you can only move up, down, left, and right. There is no side-to-side movement, really. But the worm can go up and down through the walls because he's digging and burrowing, which kind of brings a whole new mechanic to the fight if you're not prepared for it.
Oh, yeah.
So I have...
Sorry, ask your questions.
So I was going to say, I had two thoughts when this came up. One, I've seen this fight on YouTube, and it is fierce. Like, I've seen the worm just, like, snake through on, like, the back, behind the terrain. And then my second thought was kind of dumb. I was like, it's a giant Alaskan bullworm!
Oh, very much comparable. Then the Crimson brings up some more. Well, the Corruption has its own like unique enemies where it's these just floating worm head, or these floating like buggish heads that shoot projectiles at you. That's the most you get in that biome until I think a certain point. But on me and Ann and I's playthrough, we went with Crimson, and Crimson has its own it has a much more diverse selection of enemies. Some of them creepy. Well, actually, all of them are creepy.
All of them are pretty creepy.
And very noisy, mind you. So you got these, and they're all like themed after flesh. So like you got Yeah, it's
That's where the crimson comes from. The whole biome is red from flesh and blood. It's pretty gross.
Blood
Uh,
for the blood throne.
yeah, it's pretty Warhammery.
and that should roll into what the boss is that after you break those hearts, you have to break 3 of them. Same goes with the shadow orbs. You break 3 of them and your world shows up to beat you up. But I think the Crimson has the most intimidating boss out of the 2 of them, because it is a giant alien brain. Like it really comes off as something definitely otherworldly when it shows up, even though it's very human anatomy like inspired. It just still feels otherworldly. It's a giant human brain, but it's the brain of Cthulhu. So with it comes a bunch of eyeballs that like
Oh, here we go again.
Mhm.
yeah, that these eyeballs they're used to attack you, but that's also its weakness in that beginning phase, because after you get every single one of those in your little arena that you made in its den, it splits into its like final form, its second phase, where it's the center of the brain just opens up and it shows this like, I think it's like a heart and an eye inside this brain, and that's when like the fight ramps up a bit.
It starts teleporting. It can phase through walls now. It starts sending more of its little eyeball clones at you to attack you. It's definitely the rougher of the 2 fights. The Crimson fight is harder than the Corruption fight.
No one can see my face right now, but like when they said heart coming from the brain, I was like,
Yeah, it's pretty horrifying.
I don't like this.
Because it definitely fits into what I said, that it's, while it's still recognizable, it's still very otherworldly.
So it's like an uncanny valley kind of thing. It's like similar, but there's definitely something different about this human.
Oh, it's not even a human shape.
Well,
it's just a big old brain.
But you know what I mean. You know what I'm trying to say.
It's messed up for sure. Terraria has no problem putting in a little bit of body horror.
Yeah, this. So from what I've seen of this game, it's like Super Mario Minecraft with a little bit of gore, and it's like it's kind of tastefully done. Like, I'm not gonna lie, but then there's sometimes like a giant Cthulhu flying eyeball where I'm like, that doesn't go with my happy trees.
And then that leaves, I think, well, there is two more bosses of this part of the game that you can face.
Yeah, there's the big king of slimes, which, you know, he's just a big giant super slime. There's a event that can happen, kind of like a blood moon, which is just a randomly generated event during one of the nights. During one of the days of your world, it can start raining slime, which will spawn a giant slime, which, you know, is not a big threat, except, you know, it kind of is if you're not ready for it. Same with any other thing in Terraria. If you're not prepared for it, it's going to push your shit in. The game is not easy. The game is not forgiving.
2D
But
Dark Souls.
that slime, it kind of makes, it's kind of small compared to King Slime, who has his own little cape, and think of the King's jellyfish.
He has a cape. That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yep,
That's
the King
exactly what I was
from
thinking.
SpongeBob. He's kind of like that. He's just a big old King Slime.
No, Kevin. I'm sorry. I didn't do my research on this game like I normally do, so I'm just full of memes today. I
That's
apologize.
No, you're great.
Oh, I was always making fun of something or other in this game, and it's still fun. And like King Slime, he's able to teleport if you decide to put yourself somewhere where he can't reach. But I mean, he's still kind of I would say he's on the level of Eye of Cthulhu, that he could be somewhat of a pushover after a certain level starting gear. But there is another boss I want to say that isn't much of a pushover, and that's Queen Bee. Which, if you're feeling brave enough to explore the jungle at the beginning part of this world, you'll find these giant hives, which contain like a bee larva. Which, if you're daring enough to break it, you better be ready to face the consequences.
So if you're ever feeling stupid as fuck, just go mess with a bee baby and see what happens.
Oh yeah, it's definitely like stick your copper sword into a giant beehive. Certainly, there can't be any consequences for that.
Sounds like the definition of fuck around, find out, if you ask me.
That is kind of the definition of the jungle biome. It's big, it's expansive, it's pretty. But if you go in there unprepared, you're going to die to everything. There's thorns trying to kill you. There's boulders trying to kill you. There's hornets trying to kill you. There's big turtles. There's dart traps. There's boulders. There's trapped chests. Explosives wired up to ore. The whole place is completely dangerous. But it's also
Oh my God,
really fun and challenging.
I found one of those one day, one of those trap chests rigged with TNT.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God. And it was like on a floating platform. So like I went and opened the chest. I'm like, oh, I found loot. This is awesome. Boom, 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 boom. This was bullshit.
You die
Like,
instantly. Does so much damage at one shot too.
I don't think I died. I think that was the thing. I didn't die, but I fell. And I fell pretty far. And I was just like, this is bullshit. I
Now I
find
can't get
something
back up
cool.
there.
Yeah, it's like, how do I get back up there? You know?
It's like, well, I got a new commitment, I guess.
Challenge unlocked.
We
But then-
mentioned at the beginning there is a dungeon on every world that you any world of Terraria that you make. Doesn't matter what you name it, whether you have a crimson or a corruption, how big or how small, the world will always spawn with a dungeon, because the dungeon has a lot of important progression tied to it, as far as like getting gear. At the beginning of the game, it'll have just regular skeletons that can help you use certain magics and bones and, just random goodies. But guarding the dungeon is an old man who has been cursed. And as previously mentioned, the old man can eventually be, I don't know, what is the cure of a curse? What is that word called? Purified?
I mean, yeah, I guess he's like cured of the curse.
I don't
So,
know. I don't have enough power.
Even though,
I don't have
so-
enough platinum to buy that grammar.
Good callback.
so the old man is this like catalyst for a curse. He is bound to the dungeon. He's not allowed to leave it, even though you could just watch him walk off of it sometimes. But that's whatever.
You're breaking my immersion. Stop it.
Yeah, and so basically, he is the start of another boss. He sheds his form. He dies as you challenge. If you have to arrive there at night, the dead of night. You have to challenge the dungeon guardian. Well, no, that's a different enemy, but he's almost a boss. So, Skeletron. He's just a big old 2 arms and a head. And
it's a big
at your
floating
level,
skeleton head and 2 big giant skeleton arms.
and he is not afraid to smack you around like it's Smash Bros or whatever.
Out of
around your
all
arena.
of the beginning bosses that we've talked about, Skeletron is probably the one you will have the most problems with. If you don't have a good range weapon, there's almost no option to fight Skeletron in the beginning of the game. He just does too much damage and he's too fast. He will definitely punish you if you don't have enough players to just beat him with melee. So you're going to want to go range against that guy, in my opinion.
Yeah. Which, if you fought the Queen Bee enough, you may have been you've been lucky enough to get the bee gun, which allows you to shoot out bees that auto target enemies.
Which is really useful.
Which is especially if it's against Skeletron. While you can just shoot up shoot out a bunch of bees and also accompany that with some taps from the copper sword you got, the legendary copper sword. If you're daring enough to put a modifier on that, but after the trial, the death of fighting this giant skeleton head and 2 arms, which this actually introduces a game mechanic to where you find out that if there is separate parts to a boss, you can knock out those parts to reduce the threat or to isolate the threat.
Example is you can kill one of the 2 arms, and then he doesn't have that arm anymore.
Yeah. So then all you're left to fight is the head, which just ends up spinning around and throwing itself around. But once that's done with, you have access to the dungeon and the goodies within, as well as other things.
Why couldn't we go in the dungeon before?
Well, if you're like, look at this old man, I don't feel like coming back at night, I want to go down there right now, this moment. You walk past him, you go through the door, you start jumping down the platforms, and suddenly, out from the darkness comes a giant spinning head that's also skeletal and just one-shots you with 900 damage?
I think it's 9,999.
Yeah.
Okay.
So no matter what, even if you had the best gear in the entire game with the best damage mitigation, he does enough damage to one-shot you no matter what.
It's just hard-coded. Okay, understood. So,
well, there's nothing in the game that
man.
can reduce 9,999 damage to enough damage to live through.
Right, it's like max value.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
I get you. So I gotta talk to the old man to get into the stronghold to fight Skeletron?
Yeah, Skeletron.
Skeletor's from He-Man. Okay, so I gotta fight Skeletron, and then I get the treasure.
Yep, then you can go in the dungeon, and there's tons of chests and traps and a lot of enemies, but if you can conquer them, there's a lot of good loot to be gotten. There's a really good early game sword called the Muramasa. There's some magic to be got.
Wait a minute. So you're telling me that I risk my freaking ass to fight this Skeletron motherfucker, and there are still traps and bullshit in the dungeon?
100%.
Oh, yeah.
What?
The dungeon is a very mean place. It might as well be called the Trap House, because it's run down and full of traps.
Yep.
And you gotta be doing a lot of cocaine to go in there, it sounds like.
Well, by this point, you should have tools to demolish some of these traps, such as sticky bombs or, decent enough pickaxes. But that also comes at the expense of leaving yourself vulnerable to monsters nearby, such as the mini skeletons that wield melee or magic, or heck, there's other traps you just can't get rid of no matter what. The only way to get rid of them are patching them out of the game if you're feeling daring enough to. But
I got a code to get rid of some of this bullshit. Man, I hate coding. This sucks.
Right.
Okay. So I'm in the stronghold. I'm going for the treasure. I'm Indiana Jonesing all these traps. Now what?
Well, there's not a lot more you can do in the dungeon right now. You've kind of conquered it at this point. If you've been down there long enough to get every enemy to drop their respective loot, and you've hit every chest down there that you can open, you may find chests you can't open and that are very different than any chest you've come across. They're very strange colored and have a different shape and look very fancy. If you hover over a lot of things in the game, your mouse cursor will a tiny little description of what the item is or tell you what it is. So if you hover over the chest, you might find that it's a hollow chest, a crimson chest, a snow chest, a jungle chest. All of these are tied to a biome, and later on in the game, if you're lucky, you can get a key from one of these biomes and come back to the dungeon and open one of these chests. However, as of right now, that's kind of the only thing you can do in the dungeon is mark off these chests and loot everything in there. So, we've kind of reached a what do we do now? We've been all the way this way. We've been to the beach. We've killed all the bosses. We've been through the corruption or the crimson. So what do we do now? Well, why don't we just dig down? You know, we got to get down. We got to figure out what's down there at some point. So either by exploring big long caves and making a journey through the long crust of the world, or you can do what a lot of players do and make what's called a elevator. It's really simple. Yep. Since the game is a mining based game, you can just take your pickaxe and stand on the floor and just dig a 2 wide, because you're 2 blocks wide, and you just dig a 2 block wide hole, literally straight from the surface all the way down until you can't go down any further. You just keep digging down.
Now hold on there a minute. My mama told me when I played Minecraft, you never dig straight down.
That's correct. It is very dangerous, and you might and very likely will die very many times creating your elevator. It is hell making an elevator. You can use like high level explosives that can break tiles, or that's really about it. You have to pickaxe through it. The more players you have in the hole at this point in the game, the faster it'll go, because you can have more players targeting more blocks and breaking things faster. But there is no joyous or easy process of getting from the surface to the deep undergrounds of the world, unless you find some weird weird ravine or weird deep scar in the world that somehow goes all the way down. You're gonna have to dig your way.
You're gonna have to dig a diggy hole. Okay, so I'm done with the stronghold. I got my loot. Now I'm digging a diggy hole. Now I'm going to hell. Where am I now? Like, what is my goal? What is my objective?
Well, at this point, you probably don't really know. The guide has alluded to you that you probably want to go down and explore the underworld. It might have some valuable loot, but at this point, that's kind of been your driving factor. More and more powerful loot. So, why not? So, as soon as you finally get down into hell, you're probably going to find some buildings. Some old abandoned structures, and a ton of enemies, and a ton of lava, if you didn't already run into that on the way down.
Okay.
So you did ask a good question, and I'll let Alyster answer that. Alyster, why did we dig all the way down to hell for? What is the point of being down here? This place sucks.
Oh, it always sucks. It never sucks. Or wait, no, it does suck. It always sucks. So something you get in the dungeon from one of the gold chests you have unlocked from killing slimes and getting keys from them is something called a shadow key. And you're like, well, this doesn't seem to do much. It says I can unlock a shadow chest. What's that? So you just kind of hold on to it for now. You put it in, like, I don't know, a piggy bank, or if you killed a certain little Easter egg boss, you put it in your little chest buddy that follows you around, which that'll be a separate mechanic we could discuss in a bit, probably.
Mm-hmm.
But you'll explore these buildings, and you're wondering, man, I'm wanting to get better loot, but I can't seem to find better metals. And, you find these new furniture pieces in some of these buildings, and one of the things you find is a new kind of furnace you've never seen before, and it's a hellstone furnace. Pretty fancy, if you ask me. So, you steal one of these. You defile these hellstone brick homes for their fancy furnaces. They're not using it. They're no one's home.
No one's home.
Burglary's fine in this world. So
everything's fine as long as no one's there around to catch you.
Oh, aside from the dozens of demons, that's probably their house. But they shouldn't have died to my legendary copper sword.
Shouldn't have been a demon. That's not my fault. Did I tell you to rise up against God? No. Fuck you.
So you do eventually find what is the shadow chest, and you find powerful flame-based weapons such as the Sun Fury or a flame leash, or you can have a little demon as a pet. Wild.
Okay, cool, cool.
And you, as you're fumbling around trying to avoid getting cooked, you encounter a demon that's holding something. It's something that you wouldn't expect to see a demon be holding unless it was maybe a kid or whatever, but one of the flying demons is holding a
Spaghetti.
doll. Oh, well, that is a nice
never
food
mind.
item. That is a nice food item you can get in the game.
Well,
One
I'm
of the
just saying,
best.
this is the last thing I expected a demon to be holding. Anyways, I'm sorry. ADHD brain.
Hey, I understand. But one of them is holding. Sometimes you'll find one that's holding a doll. Sure, you kill the enemy, and you notice that when some things fall in the lava, it's gone for good. Money, some blocks you left on the ground, but like if you talk to the guide or maybe there's some NPC that insinuates it, you're gonna want to. For some reason, you get the hint that you're supposed to drop the doll into the lava. So, Anne, you want to talk about that?
So, as Alyster mentioned, you get the little guide. It looks exactly like your guide, and it's a voodoo doll. So you got nothing left to do. You scoured hell. You've mined the ore. You've smelted it into even new gear that's down here. So now you have no option left but to throw this fucking doll right into the lava because you feel like it. Or if you're really unlucky, it could happen on accident. When you kill the demon, it can just drop right into the lava. And when you kill, when you kill the demon and it drops it into the lava, or you drop it into the lava, your guide will instantly die because it turns out it is your guide.
It's a voodoo doll.
It's your guide voodoo doll. Yeah.
Okay.
So you just threw your guide into lava, and now your guide just instantly exploded into 1,000,000 degrees of heat, and he died. And
the villager pit.
Yeah, so right on the screen where it says your guide was killed, right under that, it also says in the same color and text font as any other boss, the wall of flesh has spawned. Excuse me? I wasn't ready for a boss.
What? Oh, no.
So depending on what part of the world you're in, the boss is going to spawn to your left or your right, and he's going to start coming towards you. And that's it. He's going to just keep coming towards you. You have no choice but to run and run away from this boss as he starts chasing you down. Because if he runs into you, he's obviously going to do a ton of damage to you. But because the game has like an invincibility frame mechanic, so you take damage, you go all blinky like arcade game or whatever. You can't take damage during the blinky mode. So he hits you, does a lot of damage, and he goes right through you. He'll shoot a tentacle of flesh out of his body now that you're behind him, and he'll grab you, and he'll aggressively throw you in front of him so he can slam into you and try to eat you again. So you only have one option.
Not feeling that.
Run and shoot. Just run and shoot. If you were not prepared for this at this point, you are going to have a hell intended. You're going to have a hell of a time getting through this because this boss is fast, he's tall, and he can travel blocks. So there is no escape unless you have an item that's called a magic mirror, which allows you to return to your home. There is no way to get out of this fight other than dying.
Well, I think even if you... Well, I thought if you teleport out, there's I thought there was like a chance that he could literally pull you through the world back to the underworld to continue the fight.
I think you might be right. I think if there's other players still in the fight, if you didn't deactivate the fight, if you're playing solo, you can leave. But if there's other players, yes, Alyster's right. He will try to snipe his tentacle all the way through the entire world to pull you to hell.
No, what? That is insane. What? No. I don't like that. I don't like any of that.
You struggle, and somehow we managed to kill the wall of flesh. We shot him with a bunch of bullets, or the main strategy that is recommended is you just build a 1 block long platform all the way this way and all the way that way. So you can just run all the way left or all the way right, depending on which way the wall spawns, and just shoot at him as you're running. You will limit how much of the boss you can hit because you can't shoot through blocks at this point. So you can only hit him in the little tunnel that you've made. So you're going to want it tall so you can shoot him. Just as strategy. But anyway, so you finally kill him, and this boss dies in a way that no other boss does. He spawns a cube, like a box of solid rock whenever he dies, to contain all of the items that he drops. So nothing bad can happen to them. A nice little safety mechanic, considering, they don't want to drop him into lava, because if you're not prepared to drop into lava, then all of your gear's gone, that you just beat this boss. The game is nice to you. It keeps everything in a little metal, or I think it's metal, a metal box that drops. And you break into the box and you get your loot. And there are a couple things that he always drops, and a bunch of obviously random loot, because that's how the game is, just randomly dropped loot through different bosses and different enemies. So one of the things he drops is a emblem, which can buff different classes in the game. There's Ranger emblem, there's the Sorcerer emblem, and the Warrior emblem, which, buff those specific stats kind of even across the board. I think like 15, 17%. It's a marginal increase, so it's a good item. But the thing that he drops that's really important is the thing called the Pwn Hammer, the PWN Hammer. It is, at this point in the game, not the best hammer. You probably have a better hammer. If you've done everything up to this point that we've talked about, you definitely have a better hammer. But this hammer says something, and it's like flavor text. It says something about being able to break specific things that you've come across before. As we've kind of glossed over, in the Crimson and the Corruption, there is another thing that spawns along with those hearts and orbs. There are Crimson and Demon Altars, which are just little, well, they're not necessarily like altars. They're essentially little stone piles that either have flesh on it or claws on it, because that's the respective style for them. If you at this point, or before this point in the game, have tried to break them, you will know to never ever do it again. If you take a hammer and you go swing and you try to break this demon altar, it will do like 5 times the damage you tried to do to that altar right back to you. So if you only have like 100 health and you hit it, it might kill you in one hit. So you find out very early in the game, if you've tried to mess with these, don't mess with them. They hurt. If I touch them, they're going to kill me. Well, now that you've finally killed the wall of flesh and you drop this hammer, it says that it can break these altars. So, well, now you have a... Huh?
Now I can go fuck with them.
Yeah, so now I have a very clear goal. I have something I couldn't fuck with, and I have the tool to fuck with it. Well, time to start a new journey. As you finally go back to the surface, you're going to notice the world has changed completely. There's new places, there's new enemies, things do more damage. You have entered what is colloquially called hard mode. After you beat the wall of flesh, the world enters hard mode. You get a whole new corruption-style biome called the Hollow. Alyster, do you want to explain the Hollow?
So the Hollow is this biome that is... what's the best word? It
exactly,
is,
right? It's hard.
It is, but it is this biome that is... The best way I could describe the enemies and the stuff that spawns in there is mystical. It is whimsical. Like, it is something out of a fairy tale.
Fairy tale, literally, because there's a unicorn enemy.
Yeah, and it wants to kill you with that horn. And also these pixies that like to bounce about. They're fun to watch sometimes. But it also begins the start of a new mechanic in the world that with two of these biomes. The Hollow and the Crimson or Corruption. They now start spreading. And something that the game doesn't tell you is like when you go to break those altars, you unlock new medals. Like 1, 2, 3. You get 3 new medals, which are of their own tiers. And honestly, sometimes you could blow through them quite quick, go through the tiers quite quickly, depending on if you're playing by yourself or with a friend. But a hidden mechanic of those altars is that each one you break places a random little seed of crimson or corruption somewhere in the world. So that stuff is spreading, and it's bringing in the old and the new monsters that comes with it.
And like Alyster said, the metals. So you want to break the altars because you break your first one and it says the world has been blessed with blank metal. And you're like, oh, wow, I got a new metal. Okay, so that's something new I can mine. So you go willy-nilly and you just start breaking them. But like Alyster said, you unbeknowingly are just planting seeds all throughout your world. Every time you break one of these,
it's just a trap. Seed. The game again was pretending to bless you, but in disguise, it was just fucking your mom. Jeez, like this game sucks a little bit. Like not in like a quality kind of thing, just like it's such a jerk.
It is. It's a jerk of a game. Like I said, it's brutal and it's unfair. Or it's fair, it's brutal, it's unforgiving.
Like it's like, hey, there's these medals that you can get now. Oh, my bad. I just put a corruption seed in it, and it grows little corruption tendrils. And if you touch those tendrils, it'll tickle you. Like it's just. I don't like this.
Being tickled would be very pleasant, but that's not something that the game wants to give you at this point.
No, it does even worse. It starts eating your biomes. Else. The corruption.
I was going to say something else, but then I was like, maybe not.
Now that you're in hard mode, as Alyster said, the biomes start spreading. So the hollow starts getting bigger and bigger, and your crimson or corruption starts getting bigger and bigger. And if you don't pay attention to it, it can literally take over your whole world. Which you're like, okay, whatever. So it just makes enemies harder, and it ruins all biomes and makes them ugly. Whatever, no big deal. Well, circling back like 20, 30 minutes, you remember those NPCs that you worked all that time to place in places and make them nice homes, and if it gets corrupted... I was
about to say, the captain is not going to like this.
If their biome gets corrupted and it spreads too close to their house, they'll move out. They'll be like, all right, I don't live here anymore. And as I mentioned, if they die and they don't have a home, they don't respawn until you give them a new home. So you have only one choice at that point. Either somehow get rid of this corruption or crimson or hollow, or you have to run to a part of the world that's not corrupted yet and build new houses for these people. So
just slowly running out over time.
Very slowly. It is very slow, but it is unbelievably steady. It is unrelenting spread. It is the same. I don't know what the spread rate is, but it is that exact same rate every second. It will never slow down. It will never stop until it takes over the whole world.
But that comes to a point to where I don't know what causes it, but I swear there is a point to where you could cause it to speed up. Where I don't know if it's tied to certain bosses or
you insult it. You call its mother fat, and then it just speeds up.
I don't know. It's definitely possible that it speeds up somehow. I would have to look into the wiki, which this is one of the few games that has a designated whole fully built Wikipedia and a fandom. There is both. There is a wiki and a fandom. And they are completely, both have the same information, and they're both kept up to date. I don't know why. I think it's because a lot of people don't like fandom, and a lot of people are like, yeah, well, I already had the wiki, so I'm just going to keep it up to date. But it's just like a random interesting fact. But moving back to the corruption in Crimson, yeah. So you want to eventually stop it from spreading. There's a couple of ways. You can buy a tool from one of your NPCs, which just shoots gas, which will cleanse blocks for you. So you just go around the earth and you just shoot it's called the Cleminator. You just shoot your Cleminator at things, and you spray gas at the blocks, and you make them purified. So you can get rid of your corruption or your crimson manually by just Cleminating it. It's a very long and arduous process, especially since, like I said, the spread rate is consistent. If you miss one block, that one block will keep spreading, and then every block that one spreads, it'll just keep spreading. So, it's a very persistent issue, and the only other way to do it is to dig a hole, like literally a hole through the entire earth, and make a impassable divide. You also have to break the background blocks, because Crimson, Corruption, and Hollow can spread through background tiles. So if you destroy every block around it, and then you come back later, it can still be hollowed if you didn't break the back with a hammer or explosives. So, to summarize, the spread of it is a brutal and unforgiving mechanic that you either deal with or it'll deal with you. We honestly, in our playthrough, put it off for too long because I was just like, it's not a problem. It's not a problem. I don't want to do it. I don't want to spend all platinum on the Clementator juice, okay? The Clementator costs 3 platinum, and the juice for like a stack of it costs like 20 platinum, okay? It's so much money. But then I walked outside of our house one day, and I saw it like 20 blocks from our house. And I was like, I'm not playing this game anymore until this Crimson's gone. So we just spent the next like 2 days in our play session just clementating everything. Alyster, do you remember the percentage we got it from?
So I mean, to get to the Cleminator, we got our money together for it, and also spent we spent more on the Cleminator juice than we did the Cleminator itself. But nonetheless, we were starting off at a rough like 17 something, I think 17 or 16%, but that was still a decent chunk of our surface that it was covering, and I took in the effort to clear out the stuff that we had on our left side of the map, going from and did some work by clearing out the top, but I took action by going underneath the ground to also Cleminate from bottom up. And there was a part where like I just like, okay, now that we got a good chunk of this stuff pushed off to all the way out to like where its home was on the left side of the map. But like Anne said, with the NPCs that are going to move out if their biome becomes corrupted underneath their feet, is like I made sure to dig a trench around the snow biome NPC's home. So then, because they're our most valuable NPCs at this point. But
yeah, it's a goblin tinkerer lives there.
Yeah,
important.
With his wife, the mechanic. But
oh, he's married. I love that.
Something that came up as an issue for Anne whenever she was wanting to go through I think she was trying to go through the desert biome, going through the underground for something. I forget what it was. Was it sand in a bottle or?
I don't remember specifically, no.
Because I think we were trying to build like a quadruple balloon for that jump height, and we noticed that. I think we're like, hey, I think this entire like desert biome is kind of fully corrupted underneath. And after we've dealt with a few new bosses to get that steampunker unlocked, we decided to take some very liberal demolition service to the whole entirety of the desert.
I spent the last of what money I had buying rockets that were strong enough to break tiles, because I didn't want to just manually just mine through the desert. So I just bought like 9,000 rockets.
I was about to say, that sounds like the very political way of saying you nuked the desert.
I definitely did.
Oh.
I nuked the hell out of the desert. If you jumped onto our world and went to the desert, it looks like a Connect 4 grid of holes in the desert. Because I just went. I went left. I went up. I went left. I went up. I went left. I went up. I was destroying everything.
It was the most efficient way to, cleanse out the crimson from that part of the world, because that was where it started spreading from initially. Because whenever you kill Wall of Flesh, the biomes, the hollow and crimson biomes, spawn in a sort of V going down to the underworld. And the best way we did it to get rid of it was to, start a grid underground to, isolate instances of the crimson spread. The hollow, not a problem. We like those enemies, but crimson,
The hollow is weird because it's still an evil biome and it still spreads and can ruin player housing. But for all intents and purposes, it's not that threatening. There's not any really deadly enemies in there with any unique mechanics, unless you go underground. The underground hollow is a threat, but if you don't live underground, it's not a big deal. Above ground hollow is kind of nice. It paints your trees, makes things rainbow. It's kind of nice, actually.
Yeah.
Okay.
Plus, NPCs are more willing to live in the hollow than the weird fleshy biome.
I would imagine so. I would imagine that people typically do not like flesh floors.
Yeah, no, absolutely not.
So I want to get to the real point now. I want to talk about Moonlord in these next 10 minutes. Like, how the hell do I kill the Moonlord?
Well, from the steps we've gotten to right now, it's quite a long journey. If you had assuming you had all the gear, it's still another 3 bosses away.
Oh, jeez.
But now that you're in hard mode, you have the upgraded version of the basic bosses that you've already fought. So you have the Eye of Cthulhu, you have the Eater of Worlds, and you have Skeletron. All 3 of them have mecha versions of them, where they're all mechanical. They have harder armor. They have lasers. They're mecha versions. There's the Skeletron Prime, the Destroyer of Worlds, and the Twins, which is the Eye of Cthulhu twice, but he's all mechanical. So after you've fought these 3 bosses, if you're crazy enough, you can go for the achievement like we did and fight all 3 of them at once. And after you beat all 3, you have to beat all 3. You can beat as many of Cthulhu as you want, but if you don't beat all 3, you don't get to progress. So once you finally kill the 3rd one, you get a notification, just like boss spawned, but it tells you the jungle grows restless. It doesn't really tell you what that means necessarily, but it does let you know, okay, going to the jungle. We've been putting it off. We went there for a little bit, got our ass kicked by bees and turtles, so time to go back to the jungle. So we finally get to the jungle, and we start digging down there, and there is new enemies, of course, because we're in hard mode, and the jungle's even harder than before. But there is now mysterious glowing plants that are called life fruit, which are similar to the life crystals you've been gathering up till this point, which are just items that you can eat to give you more health. So before hard mode, you get crystals and eat those, and post hard mode, you get life fruit and eat those for even more health. And the other glowing plant down there is it looks like a flower bulb. It's glowing pink, and you can see it through almost anything. It's very ominous looking. So if you go up to it and you decide to try to mine it or destroy it, or you blow it up with an explosive, you will summon the next boss, which is probably one of the hardest bosses in the game if you don't prepare for it. Every other boss you can struggle against even without an arena, and you can easily fumble your way through the fight if you have enough gear and enough players. Plantera is a giant plant. It's just a big giant plant bulb with a bunch of tentacles coming off of it, like vines that have other plants on it. Mm-hmm. And that's all it does. It just flies towards you and it shoots you with seeds, stingers, darts. I don't know what the right vernacular is, but it shoots you with spores? Projectiles. Probably. And then it also tries to have its little things bite you. Really simple, mechanic, but the jungle, the way the biome works, it's so compact and so tight that unless you have something that can go through walls, which is at this point almost nothing. There's almost nothing in post or pre-Plantera that can you as the player shoot through walls. So you're going to miss all your bullets, your magic's not going to work, and you can't melee through walls with almost anything. So your limited options are extremely in the dungeon. You're just really put in a bottleneck. So if you manage to destroy and kill Plantera, the world changes again. There's even harder enemies that come, and you finally can go to the jungle temple. If you've been exploring the jungle this whole time looking for Plantera bulbs and getting these new life fruits to get your health to max, you can go inside the jungle temple. The jungle temple is kind of like the dungeon, but there's nothing in it except for traps and the spawner for the boss in the temple. There's no other purpose
and some
there.
lizard people.
Yeah, but those don't really drop anything or give you anything. There's no point in being in the temple, really, other than destroying the temple for its loot, killing the lizards inside of it, and killing one of the final bosses, which is the golem. So I finally managed to get to the temple and not get killed by all these crazy traps. You find a room where there's like an altar that has a glowing light in it. And as you've been conquering the temple, you will have got power cells, which you at this point have no idea what to do. You're like, okay, well, I'm just going to keep these power cells. You finally get down to this altar, and you can put the power cells in the altar. Doing that will spawn the golem. Now, you would think at this point, you fought arguably the hardest boss in the game so far, which is Plantera. If you didn't prepare for it, you've died many, many times. And there's so many spawners down there to try it over and over again, just as a, we feel bad for you mechanic. So you're thinking, okay, the next boss has got to be really challenging. You're in this kind of boxed-in tiny little room, and then you activate the spawner, and this dinky little boss spawns. He just drops. He's just basically a head, a little tiny still statue body, and then just two fists that he can punch you with. He is just a tiny little, rock'em sock'em robot.
I was just about to say rock'em sock'em. That's exactly what it sounds like.
Yeah. And he's like one of the final bosses. He's pretty disappointing. I don't like the golem. Boy. In fact, the golem is so underwhelming that you can just, after you kill him, you can break his spawner and just take it home. And just keep the golem spawner right at your house.
That reminds me of the Luxord fight in Kingdom Hearts 2. Like, you're fighting all these amazing bosses with all these cool weapons, and there's Poker Guy. He's got cards. he sometimes turns you into a dice. You know, it's whatever.
And then finally, if you were able to kill the golem, you are in the post-golem, post-Plantera phase, which there's only one thing left to do.
Moonlord?
Is it Moonlord? So far.
Tell me it's Moonlord.
Well, even now, there's still a multi-step to get to Moonlord. Moonlord is its own, whole event you have to prepare for. It's not as simple as just going into a room and there's Moonlord. So,
Moonlord better be the coolest fucking thing in this planet. Otherwise, I'm going to scream. There's
Moonlord
so many steps to get to him.
Yeah.
There's so many steps to get to him.
So, you finally beaten all the bosses up to this point, and you get called once again to the dungeon. And this time, you finally have a purpose there. Instead of just, beating up stuff and looting stuff. Every big mage boss up until this point increases the difficulty and the reward of the dungeon. The final increment is post-golem. So after you kill the golem, you have to go back to the dungeon, and as soon as you walk up to the dungeon, you see something you've never seen before. You see 4 dudes in some weird space medallion thing that's on fire with magical, not fire, and they're all just partying. They're partying as hard as they can, worshiping this medallion. And you're just like, excuse me, can I get in the dungeon? And if you want, you can walk right past them. They're just trying to party and enjoy their medallion. But if you attack them, they will retaliate, and you'll have to kill them. If you decide to mess with them and kill them, you will have to fight their boss. Their boss is the lunatic cultist, and he is a Very
Oh,
powerful
that's
wizard.
the one before Moonlord. I know that.
Yeah, he's the lunatic cultist. he's the harbinger of the Moon Lord. He brings upon the Moon Lord to the world. I think in lore, the cultists choose the planet, then they do the ritual, and then their boss comes and he brings them like a Silver Surfer. And kind of, the Moon Lord is like the Galactus of the world. He's coming to eat it now that you've fucked up with the cultists. So you fight this super powerful wizard and you beat him, and you're like, okay, finally, who? That must have been the powerful game guy. Nope, of course not. Why would the shit be over? This is just a never-ending train of bosses and destruction. It's
the
great
game
though.
that never ends.
After you kill the lunatic cultist, there are 4 big magical pillars that spawn in corners of the world. If you travel to those areas, you see literally aliens, enemies you've never seen before, shapes you've never seen before. They're not even like remixes of enemies, completely new enemies. If you manage to kill enough of them around the pillars, you'll break their shields that they have. And if you do that 4 times, you kill enough enemies, you break the shield, and then kill the pillar, finally, your mind will be fucked, and the Moon Lord will come to take your soul.
Oh my
And
god,
believe
it's
me,
finally
he will.
here.
He'll kill you in like one hit if you're not fully geared. He is a bullet. He combines almost every mechanic of every boss you fought up until now into one big giant soup of just hell. The only reason we were able to fight through it, I think, we beat him the first try. I think the only reason we were able to do it is because I have extensive Moon Lord knowledge. And Alyster, up until this point, had been building for like full tank survivability. So
Yeah.
I think.
Wait,
we were running.
we have to stop everything. There was a cat on screen. Cat alert. Every time.
He's
I'm
hungry.
sorry.
He's going to get his food.
I gotta do it every time.
The audio listeners are missing out. They never get to see cats.
Oh well.
But anyway, so Moon Lord finally shows up and he tries to push in your stuff. And Alyster is tanking it with beetle armor, using it to negate like 30% of the damage at a time. And I'm flying around at max speed just using my gun, because that's my build. I'm just built all range weapons.
And also before that, we had to deal with a boss called the Empress of Light, who kind of like is some good practice for getting into the, whole bullet hell type gameplay, which is very helpful for Moonlord because there's an event where you can get a certain mount that allows you to fly freely, and that can help with Moonlord significantly.
Okay.
But you definitely
I
did,
get
because
you.
if we didn't have that, if we didn't have that mobility, we definitely wouldn't have been able to win the fight. And we almost didn't, because I died during the fight. Moonlord kept hitting me with strays while trying to hit Alyster. And then I die, and you get like a respawn timer. And I'm counting it down out loud. I'm just panicking and screaming as I'm watching Alyster's health bar get redder and redder and tinier and tinier. And finally, I respawn. And as soon as I respawn, Alyster died. And I spent the next 30 seconds not even shooting Moonlord. I'm just running from him the whole time. I'm running from one side of the map and then just dropping to the floor, flying the other side of the map. And Alyster hits like 5 seconds, and I'm like, just tell me when you respawn. And they keep counting. 5, 4, 3, 2, and I die. And I'm like, no! And I guess because of the Discord voice delay, they had already said 1 and they had respawned. So
oh my god.
They respawned. They respawned as the second I die, the second I died, they respawned, and Moonlord just instantly disappeared. Oh no, Moonlord died, just despawned. We fucking lost. Now we have to do all that fucking pillars and all that shit over again. And then I hear Alyster start screaming as Moonlord teleports right above them and just starts annihilating everything around the house. And I'm like, oh shit, all you have to do is stay alive and we win. If you just stay alive, he had like 4k health. He had nothing left. As soon as I respawned, I just pumped a couple more bullets into him. And finally, we were able to beat him. We both only died the one time in the fight, but it was the most stressful fight because we both cut it to like the last second of each of our respawns.
Oh my god. All right, so the big question: what happens when you kill Moonlord? Is it just straight the credits, or what's up?
Yes, actually, the credits literally start rolling as soon as you beat Moonlord. The loot will drop, and then it'll be like Terraria, created by Relogic, and it'll start rolling the developers and like the special things and everything like that. But the cool about the credits is an overlay, so you can still walk around and still play the game.
Oh, very nice.
It's
very
just
cool.
in the middle of your screen, overlaid on your character.
Okay.
Which is really nice. There is a lot of things you can do post Moonlord. In fact, most of the best items in the game come from post Moonlord, because it's supposed to prepare you for expert mode and even 2 difficulties later that we didn't even talk about because we were running out of time. So if you get all this stuff from Moonlord, you can get new weapons, you can get new armors, you get all the end game materials. One of the best things that he drops, which I believe is like 100% drop rate, is the aperture portal gun.
Nice. Okay. Nice. All right.
Right click portal 1, left click portal 2. Bloop, 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 bloop. It's literally the portal gun. Same model, same. It's one of the greatest items in Terraria. And there are so
Very
many.
cool.
We could literally spend another hour and a half talking about items and stuff, but we're going to have to wrap for the episode because I want to just keep going all day. Alyster, do you have any closing thoughts or anything you want to comment about the game?
There's so much about the game that, like, it can't fit into just one podcast episode, I think. But that's not a bad thing. That means that's more content for you, people that are listening, can explore for yourself. Find all the little niche little bits and pieces that we may have not gone over. And I say it's definitely worth the money that you pay for the game. And I would even dare say maybe it's even worth more than what you purchase it for.
I definitely think this is a $30, $40 game. And they constantly run it as a sale. Its default price is $20. And it's still, even running sales all the time, according to an article I was reading, it is the 10th most sold video game of all time, with over 44 million copies as of last year. That's pretty insane for a game that is constantly $5.
That's ridiculous.
Also run like a 4-person pack because they know that you're probably going to want to play with your friends, which usually costs the same as 1 copy of the game. I have extra copies of the game because if it's a couple of times in the past, I have bought the game as a 4-pack for my friends, but mostly just to support the developers. Because like I said, I would have paid full $60 for this game because it is a fully complete game and it has had years upon years of free updates and free content and collaborations, and it is definitely a passion of love. It's made by 12 current people. I believe it was made by 16. There's a 12 that still work as main staff. But the fact that it's a 12-man team, it's such a great game. It's kind of interesting that a lot of the games we've been playing and talking about, Peter, fit along the same lines. The bar team is what, 20 people?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, so another great game made by a tiny little community. It's really good, and if you, the listener, really want to try a fun Minecraft-like game, which again, like I said, totally based on everything you said, is very criminal to compare it to Minecraft. You have to check out Terraria.
I think it's interesting that the overarching theme of our podcast is AAA is dead.
Yeah, what was our AAA?
So true.
Call of Duty. Yeah, we did Call of Duty.
Oh yeah, we did Call of Duty. That's right. That's right.
Yeah,
and that was a pretty good episode. I'm not gonna lie. Never mind. But for the most part, we just don't touch the AAA stuff. We're going for indie devs, small teams, and that is where true gaming is right now.
Oh, definitely.
It's made by these small groups of people that love and play their own games. There's not freaking Tom Howard.
Corporate executive.
Yeah, no. It's not the Blizzard Activision board of executives. It's definitely
All
not
right,
Microsoft.
we are going to wrap now. I just wanted to say thank you for joining us, everyone. Thank you for listening. Alyster, is there anything you want to plug? Any social media or anything?
Not really. I don't have really any social medias that I'm active on due to how divided the internet is.
Okay, that's fair.
That's cool. See you next time.